I woke up in a cold white room. The hospital ceiling was that same silver gray, flickering under fluorescent lights I've always hated, light that made everything look like it had no life left. I had no idea how long I'd been out. All I remember was the very last second before everything went black. I heard a voice, coming from somewhere outside my own body. "We're losing him." Not exactly what you want to hear right before you hear nothing at all. My name's Cameron Doyle. I'm 45, and I've been a long-haul trucker for 22 years. Not a glamorous job, but enough to pay the bills and give Dana, my wife, a stable life. She was never really satisfied, but I tried, because that's what a husband's supposed to do, right? I'd noticed the signs for weeks: tight chest, short breaths every time I stepped down from the truck. I figured it was the crappy gas station coffee or just middle-aged fatigue. Then one day, at a rest stop near Omaha, the pain hit so hard I had to pull over and call 911 myself. Then came the helicopter, the wind, blurry faces in surgical masks. And then, darkness. 2 days later, I opened my eyes, tubes in both arms. A nurse smiled and told me I had died, twice. But they brought me back. I tried to move, then reached for my phone. There was one message, just one, from Dana, the woman I'd called my wife for 15 years. It was a screenshot of our shared bank account. $0. With a message underneath: "I deserve this money, after everything I've done for you. Every dollar I'd saved, emergency fund, truck maintenance, retirement stash, all of it, $61.438.72, gone." I should have been furious, should have thrown something, but instead, I just felt empty. The kind of tired sleep can't fix. A heaviness that sat in my lungs and climbed all the way to my eyes. I stared at that screen for a long time. Then I just sent back a single emoji. Thumbs up. One tiny symbol, but also the last time I let her walk over me without getting called out for it. Next morning, the doctor told me I needed at least 6 weeks of rest. No driving, no stress, no traveling. He asked, "Someone coming to pick you up?" I nodded. Yeah, I lied. That night, I called Jeff, my older brother. We didn't talk often, not out of anger. Just different lives. Jeff works construction, been divorced twice, and has a pretty clear-eyed view of how people can betray each other. I just said, "I need a place to crash for a few days. And don't tell Dana." There was a pause on the other end. Then Jeff said, "She doesn't know you're alive?" I smirked. "Oh, she knows. She just doesn't know I'm not coming back anymore." I met Dana years ago at a gas station outside Cheyenne. She was standing next to an old sedan, wrestling with a flat tire. Her hands were dusty, and she looked like she was about to cry. I pulled over and got out. Didn't think twice. Maybe because that's just who I've always been. See someone who needs help, jump in. No calculations. I changed her tire in 10 minutes. She smiled, the first smile since I got there. That smile, I remember it so clearly. A mix of gratitude and a bit of embarrassment. Then she looked at me like I just saved the world by knowing how to use a hydraulic jack. "Thank you. I really wouldn't have known what to do without you." We went for coffee after that. Talked for an hour. Then 2. Then again the next night. 6 months later, we were married. Fast, but not reckless. I was 30, she was 27, old enough to know life isn't like the movies, but still young enough to believe love is everything. I was on the road 3 weeks a month. Dana stayed home. At first, she called every night. Long talks, an hour or more. From the neighbor's cat to a new pie at the grocery store. Then, over time, the calls got shorter. An hour became 15 minutes. Then just a few texts. "I'm fine. Good night. Take care." The words were still there, but the feeling wasn't. I thought that was normal. People marry long enough, the fire dies down, but I never thought it would go out completely. She started going on trips with friends I'd never met. When I asked, she said I was being controlling. I'm not the type of man who controls his wife. I never checked her phone, never questioned her schedule. I trusted her. Because I believed marriage was about trust. There were nights I'd call from a highway rest stop in Idaho. On the other end was the sound of the TV. Then Dana's rushed voice. I'm in the middle of something. Can we talk later? And then, silence. The call cut. That little red signal blinking in my chest like it was warning of an incoming blackout. I didn't blame her. Not back then. I just told myself. I need to work harder. Send more money. She'll see. She'll understand. Once, I brought up the idea of stopping. Maybe shortening my routes. Maybe getting an office job. She just sighed. Then do it if you want. Just don't complain later when we're short on money and start fighting again. There was never a fight. But words like that, they cut all the same. And then, one day, while I was lying in a hospital bed, not even recovered from a heart that literally stopped beating, she drained the entire savings I'd built over a lifetime. No apology. Just one message. I deserve that money. I don't know when. The woman I married stopped being the girl I met at that gas station. Maybe she changed. Or maybe, I never really knew her at all. Jeff picked me up on a drizzly afternoon. Neither of us said much on the ride back. The windows fogged up, and I watched houses pass by, familiar porches I used to drive past for years, now looking like a different world I no longer belonged to. My brother lives in a small house in a quiet suburb. The living room smelled of old wood and coffee, something I never smelled back in the house with Dana. Jeff showed me to the empty room at the end of the hall, single bed. Gray sheets, a desk lamp flickering like the bulb was dying. Stay as long as you need, he said, setting down the duffel I'd brought. And don't worry, I won't say a word to Dana. I just nodded, didn't say thank you, not because I wasn't grateful, but because my throat felt like it had a thin layer of dust. Couldn't get words through. That night, I lay on a bed that wasn't mine. There was a long crack across the ceiling, like an old scar. I stared at it, as if maybe, if I looked long enough, all the questions would answer themselves. But nothing came. Just silence. The kind of silence that weighs heavier than any sob. Next morning, I had coffee with Jeff in the kitchen. He made sandwiches, handed me half. I took a bite, tasteless. Not because the sandwich was bad, but because everything inside me had lost flavor. She really took everything? Jeff asked, eyes scanning me like he needed to confirm something too unreal. I nodded. Every last cent. Money I saved for 20 years. Jeff sat down. Didn't say anything. Just tapped the table with his fingers. What are you gonna do next? I didn't know. Not really. I didn't want revenge, but I also couldn't let it go. Finally, I just said, I'm gonna rest. Doctor said no stress. And I think I'm doing a pretty good job of that. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Not because my chest hurt, but because memories started flashing like an old tape on rewind. The times Dana hid her phone when I walked into the room. The times she said, I'm just moving the money to a savings account with better interest. The changed passwords. The small transfers I didn't ask about because I trusted her. I didn't want to be suspicious. But now, I had no reason not to be. On the third day at Jeff's place, I got a message from Harold, the neighbor who lived across from me and Dana. Everything okay? Haven't seen you around. Some guy's been coming to your house a few times. Thought I'd check in. I read that message 3 times. Then put the phone face down. Didn't reply. I didn't know what hurt more, Dana having someone new while I was still lying in a hospital bed. Or that Harold, the guy who used to help me roll out the trash every Friday, was the one to break the news. I sat in silence for the rest of the afternoon. Didn't talk to Jeff. Didn't turn on the TV. Just drank water and watched the rain fall outside the window. And somewhere, in that quiet, I understood. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the witness. And my job now was to document every trace of the betrayal. Next afternoon, I asked Jeff to drive me to the bank. Not the local branch. The one where they still knew me and Dana as a couple, but the main headquarters. Downtown. I wore a dark coat. Pulled the hood low. Not to hide, but because I didn't want to be recognized as the betrayed husband. I went up to the info desk and said quietly, I need to see a fraud specialist. Urgently. The woman behind the counter looked up. Didn't ask why. Didn't judge. She just nodded and led me to a glass-walled room at the end of the hallway. The person who met me was a woman in her early 40s. Sharp features. Wearing a gray blazer. She invited me to sit. I pulled out my phone, opened Dana's message, and showed it to her. A screenshot of our bank account, balance, $0. And the message, I deserve that money. I told her everything. About being hospitalized. About the machines that kept me alive while I was unconscious. And about how, at that exact time, Dana had withdrawn every cent from our joint account. Her face stayed composed, but her voice softened. We can open an investigation. But since it was a joint account, and your wife had legal access, it may get complicated. I nodded. I understand, but I still want to move forward, even if it's hard. She began typing. I sat there, watching her fingers hit each key like they were pressing deeper into the truth. We'll need your hospital records, she said, especially proof that you were unconscious during the transaction period. That's not a problem, I said. Before I left, she said something I'll never forget. If what you're saying is true, this isn't just a breakup. It's someone taking advantage of you while you were unable to protect yourself. I shook her hand, not firmly, but enough to feel I wasn't alone anymore. On the way back, Jeff stopped to get gas. I stayed in the car, looking out the window. A father was buying ice cream for his 2 kids. All 3 of them laughed, even though the air was still chilly. And suddenly, I realized, I couldn't remember the last time Dana and I laughed like that. Or honestly, had we ever? Jeff got back in, opened the car door. You want anything? I shook my head. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't thirsty. I just wanted to feel clean from all the chaos inside my head. That night, I opened my laptop, logged into a few accounts Dana didn't know about. Not because I was hiding them, she just never cared to ask. I checked on small investments, certificates of deposit, a few retirement funds I started when I got my first job. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and right now, I needed to know what I still had left. While I was looking, a message from Dana popped up. Where are you? Your car's gone from the lot. People said you're out of the hospital. I went to the house. No one's there. We need to talk. I didn't reply. A few minutes later, another one. Cameron, this is childish. I already apologized. I just thought, maybe you were seeing someone else. You're not answering, not calling, not saying anything. We can't keep going like this. I stared at the words. I used to crave an apology. But now, it felt like a blurry shadow, too late, too fake. From the kitchen, Jeff looked over. She texted you? I closed the laptop. Yeah, you gonna respond? I shook my head. Not now. From now on, everything goes through lawyers. That night, I walked alone around the neighborhood. Clear skies, few stars, but bright. Something in my chest felt lighter. For the first time since waking up in that hospital, I didn't feel pain. Not because I'd forgiven her, but because I understood. She didn't just take my money. She gave me back something else. My freedom. A week after I left the hospital, I returned to our old house. Picked noon, right when I knew Dana would be at work. I still had the key. The house, legally, was under my name. I'd refinanced it solo 3 months ago. Dana said she was busy, so I signed the papers alone. Now I know. That was one of the smartest decisions I ever made. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house smelled different. Not the usual detergent I used. Not the faint perfume Dana used to spray back when we were dating. This smell was sharp. Strange. There was cologne. A man's cologne. I didn't stop. Didn't want to know more. Didn't need confirmation. I walked straight into the bedroom. Grabbed a few changes of clothes. Some important documents. And the metal box I kept in the closet, holding my passport, birth certificate, and a few things no one else was ever allowed to touch. I didn't go into the kitchen. Didn't step into Dana's room. Just one moment made me pause, the hallway table, where our wedding photo used to be. It was empty. The frame was gone. I stared at that spot for a few seconds. Not sad. Just lighter. Maybe she thinks she's erased me from this place. I took my bag, locked the door behind me. Didn't look back. Back at Jeff's, I met Blake, the attorney Jeff had recommended. We sat at the kitchen table. Paperwork spread out in front of us. Blake read every line carefully. A middle-aged man, quiet, in a plain white shirt and an old watch. But his eyes were sharp, the kind that didn't miss a thing. Legally, he said, the house is yours. Dana's name isn't on the refinancing contract. And given your recent medical condition, you have strong grounds to retain it. I nodded in silence. As for the money she withdrew, that's more complicated. Joint accounts are generally considered shared assets. I wasn't surprised. I only asked, is there a way to prove she exploited me while I was incapacitated? Blake looked at me a little longer. There is, if you can provide hospital documents confirming you were admitted during the transactions, especially proof that you were unconscious. We can pursue a case under spousal medical exploitation. I nodded. I'll get you a full copy of my medical records, with dates and times. Blake nodded and took notes. Then he paused, looked at me. Do you want a divorce? I didn't need time to think. Yes, one word, but it carried every mile I'd walked to be able to say it. All right, Blake said, gathering the papers. South Dakota's an equitable distribution state. Given the circumstances, I believe we can get you what you deserve. Then, for the first time, his voice softened. From now on, don't respond to any of Dana's messages. Everything goes through me. I nodded. No resistance. No hesitation. Thank you, Blake. Not because he was a good lawyer, but because, for the first time, I felt like someone was standing up for me. The next day, Dana came to Jeff's house. I was home alone. Jeff was at work. I heard her car pull up. Then the click of heels on the steps. 3 rings of the bell. Then pounding on the door. Cameron, I know you're in there. Your car's right outside. I sat still in the living room. Didn't move, like a child playing hide and seek. But this time, it wasn't a game, it was survival. She stood there for a few more minutes. Then silence. I thought she left, until my phone buzzed. I'm sorry. About the money. I panicked. I thought you were with someone else. I know you changed the name on the house without telling me. I felt betrayed. Can we just talk? I didn't read the rest. I flipped the phone face down on the table. This time, I wasn't going to let her panic become another excuse to trample over me. My silence wasn't weakness. It was a choice, not to answer things that no longer deserved a reply. 2 days after her apology went unanswered, Blake called, his voice calm as always. But this time there was steel in it. Cameron, Dana's hired Patricia Wells. You know the name? I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Patricia Wells was one of the most ruthless divorce attorneys in the state. They called her the cold scalpel. Never yelled, never flinched, but she could cut through everything you had, your assets, your home, your financial future. Wells just filed a counterclaim. Blake continued. She's saying you abandoned the home, left without warning, cut communication, caused emotional distress, and now, you're trying to take everything. I was quiet for a few seconds. Not shocked, just stung, like someone had traced a thin blade across a scar that hadn't fully healed. I thought they were the ones who left me when I was lying in that hospital bed. I said, voice hoarse. Blake exhaled slowly. They're going all in. Wells is demanding a 50-50 split. She wants the house, the truck. Says you're using it to avoid responsibility. And most of all, they're asking for full access to every financial account you're holding. I stood up and stepped onto the porch. The late afternoon sky was growing darker. Wind moved across Jeff's backyard, whistling through the cracks in the door. So what now? I asked. Now, Blake said, voice steady. Now we start peeling back the masks. We filed an emergency hearing request over the money Dana had withdrawn while I was unconscious. Blake attached the medical records. Hospital admission time. Doctor's note confirming I was unconscious for nearly 40 hours. Documentation of 2 cardiac arrests. His voice was calm but firm. This isn't just a divorce. This is exploitation of a legally incapacitated spouse. And the court won't be lenient. I didn't smile, but deep inside, I felt the faintest flicker of light. Not hope for Dana, hope for me. That afternoon, I called Megan, my niece, Jeff's daughter, senior year law student. She'd helped me draft my medical power of attorney last year after a friend of mine had a stroke. Now, Megan was the one helping me trace Dana's financial footprints. You still have access to the bank email notifications, right? Megan asked. Yeah, I just never really dug through them. Then let me. 3 days later, Megan handed me a printout from a hidden account, opened 18 months ago. Account name: Dana Doyle. Every deposit is under $10. Megan said, just under the federal reporting threshold. But every deposit lines up exactly with your long-haul trip schedules. I sat still, held the statement in my hands and felt like I was holding a breakup letter, written in numbers. In secrecy, and in a year and a half of living two lives. She didn't just leave me, I said. She's been planning her exit for a long time. Blake looked at me, then slid across the table a hotel invoice from Minneapolis, booked under the name Harold Jensen. You know Harold? Blake asked. I nodded. Neighbor. The one who messaged me about a strange man in the house. Blake didn't say a word. He didn't have to. I understood. They planned it, together. I stood up and walked into the backyard. The wind was stronger now. I took a deep breath. For the first time in my life, I felt like my story wasn't a tragedy anymore. It was a battle, and I was ready to enter it. The first court date. I wore an old dress shirt I kept in my truck, a shirt I'd wear to the occasional roadside funeral in some town far from home. Light gray tie, leather shoes no longer shiny, but clean. Across the room sat Dana and Patricia Wells, the woman known for never drawing her sword unless she intended to cut. They walked in like they'd already won. Dana didn't look at me. Not once. Judge Harmon entered, a silver-haired man with glasses thin as air. No gavel needed. He could silence the room with a single glance over the rim of those lenses. The hearing was about the money Dana had withdrawn. Wells began. Your Honor, my client exercised her legal right over a joint account. Furthermore, Mr. Doyle refinanced the house without notice. That act alone demonstrates intent to unilaterally withdraw from the marriage. The judge didn't respond. He just removed his glasses, set them on the bench, and asked, Ms. Doyle, were you aware of your husband's whereabouts when you emptied the account? Wells turned to Dana. Dana leaned in and whispered something. Then Wells said, Your Honor, my client was aware Mr. Doyle was in the hospital, but she was under extreme emotional distress. She acted out of fear and panic, not malice. The judge nodded, then said, without raising his voice, So, emptying a joint account while your husband lies in a hospital bed, after 2 cardiac arrests, is a normal reaction from a distressed wife. Is that what you're telling me? No one answered. No one dared. He slid the file aside. I am ordering a freeze on all funds withdrawn from the joint account. Until final asset division is complete. Neither party may use or access any portion of that money. It wasn't a win, but it was an anchor. When your boat's been capsized, keeping it from sinking any deeper is already a victory. As I stepped out of the courtroom, I saw Dana move like she was about to come toward me. Patricia stopped her with just a light touch on the elbow, just enough to hold her back. Cameron, there's a lot you still don't know, Dana said softly, eyes on me. No tears, just fear, tangled with something else. I didn't stop. I didn't answer. Because I already knew more than enough. Outside, Blake was waiting, with the look of a man who just finished a chess match without losing. I pulled out my phone, opened a video I'd quietly recorded the week before, when Harold and Dana were arguing in the parking lot before court. They didn't see me, but the camera saw them. Saw Harold pointing in her face. Saw Dana grabbing his arm like a lover. No audio, but the body language, the eye contact, the distance between them, it said everything. I handed the phone to Blake. He watched, then whispered, Perfect. This is the key to everything she denied. The next day, in a closed session with the judge, Blake played the video on the screen. Small room, just the judge, 2 attorneys, Dana, and me. The footage was under 30 seconds. No sound. But Dana and Harold, 2 names she worked hard to separate on paper, appeared together. Unmistakably close. The judge pushed his glasses up and looked at Wells. You still maintain your client has no relationship with Mr. Harold Jensen? For the first time, Wells lost her composure. Your Honor, the nature of their relationship is not directly relevant to asset division. It is relevant. The judge cut her off, not loud, but sharp as a gavel. It is relevant when we're examining the transfer of assets between intimately connected individuals. During a time when one party was legally incapacitated, And when there's evidence of a planned flight. He turned to Dana. Were you planning to leave the state with Mr. Jensen? Dana opened her mouth. No sound came out. For the first time, she looked afraid. Not of me. Afraid of what comes next. The judge tapped the table gently. Then read aloud. I order an immediate freeze on all assets under the names of Dana Doyle and Harold Jensen, including any bank activity within the past 60 days. Neither may leave the county without court permission. Then he turned to me. Due to health considerations and credible evidence of being taken advantage of during a period of incapacity, this court grants full residential rights of the house to Mr. Cameron Doyle. No other party may access the property without his consent. I didn't speak. I just nodded. Not out of gratitude, but out of acknowledgement. I had stood back up. And I had no regrets. 3 months after I nearly died on the operating table, I moved back into the old house, alone. No Dana. No rushed phone calls. No more, sorry, I'm busy, texts. Just me, standing in the quiet kitchen, turning on the light. A warm yellow glow spilled over the wooden table. The room was silent, but for the first time, it didn't feel cold. Dana wasn't fighting anymore. After that hearing, Harold vanished. No messages, no calls, no filings. I don't know what plan they had. But when the consequences came knocking, he was the first to run. Dana was left behind. And this time, she had no one left to blame. Final ruling from the court. I kept the house. I gained full ownership of the truck. I recovered 80% of the funds from the joint account. And the part that left me speechless, Dana had to pay my attorney's fees out of her portion. As for the money she'd hidden in that secret account, the court split it 50-50, but only after she completed restitution. I didn't call her. Didn't wait for an apology. I'd come far enough to understand. Some losses don't need an explanation. They just need to be accepted. I sold the house 6 months later. Not because I needed the money, but because the walls still held the shadows of memories I didn't want to pass every morning. I bought a smaller place. Just a few streets over from Jeff. Quiet. With a little porch. Just big enough for a wooden chair. And far enough from the old days to finally feel like I was somewhere new. Megan, the niece who helped me trace the financial trails, graduated from law school not long after. I used part of the compensation to help her cover her final tuition payment. She's going to be a far better lawyer than most I've ever met. Because she understands, justice isn't about who wins or loses. It's about who stands back up after everything falls apart. I don't drive long haul anymore. My heart won't allow it. I work at the local dispatch center now, close to home. Regular hours. No more truck stop coffee. No more sunsets from the highway shoulder. At first, I thought I'd miss it. But then, one evening, I came home at 6, unlocked the door, turned on the light, made myself a cup of hot tea, and I realized, some kinds of peace can never be found when you're always running. Sometimes people ask me, are you angry? Do you regret anything? I smile a little. No, not anymore. I can't control what others choose to do. I can only choose how I respond. Dana thought she took everything from me, money, home, even my dignity. But what she really did was help me do something I hadn't done in 15 years. Stand up for myself. Last week, while packing up boxes, I found our wedding album. I held it for a long time. Didn't open it, didn't throw it out, just placed it back in the box. I didn't want to erase it from my life. Because it's not the ending. It was just a chapter. And me, I've still got more chapters left to write. Unwritten. But this time, with hands that no longer tremble. I don't know where you are in your life. Maybe you're at the beginning, believing in a new love that feels like spring. Maybe you're in the middle of the weariness, sitting in front of a cold dinner, wondering why the one who promised to stay didn't. Or maybe, like I once was, you've just woken up from a disaster, looking around and realizing everything familiar is gone. I'm not the hero of my story. I'm just a regular man, worked hard, trusted the wrong person, stayed silent for too long. But one day, when that silence became a place where others could hurt me without consequence, I stood up. No shouting, no revenge, just a quiet decision. I wasn't stepping back anymore. If you're there, lost in the rubble, in the middle of grief, remember this: you don't have to heal all at once. You just need to start by not losing yourself any further. I used to think people would change if I was just good enough. But then I learned something even more important. We aren't here to earn someone else's love. We're here to love ourselves, first. And fully. And sometimes, the person who leaves you is the one who unknowingly leads you back to the part of yourself you'd forgotten existed. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. Maybe it sounds like yours. Maybe it doesn't. But if there's one thing I hope you carry with you after closing this journal, it's this. Losing everything isn't always the end. Sometimes, it's the only way to finally begin the right way.